you have led the Science and Spiritual Quest program, and can you tell us how science can help the dialogue?
That the most important thing is that the common respect of science, the common discipline, the common concern for the natural world brings the people together. And then they realize that, for example, the belief in God is the most important, and the differences in their doctrines, they're serious, but they're not all determining.
So now we'll switch on the science and religion, and I will ask the question in different form. First, I want you to speak about what is science and religion for you, because it's a term not many people are aware about what there is behind the term. So how you define science and religion, and what are the, if I can call this fundamental progress on the last 20 years, for example, of science and religion. What are the fundamental progress about the topics? After we'll speak about the situation in academia. But first, what is science and religion, and what are the fundamental progress on the last 20 years you was a witness? Witnesses.
Yeah, I would define science and religion as having three branches. One branch is to take work from within the sciences and to show how that connects with traditional religious belief or concern. The second branch is to start from within a religious tradition, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, who then asks about the connection between their faith, their belief, their practice, and contemporary science. And the third branch is the discipline of science and religion as a separate field of study, with its own questions, its books, its conferences, its progress. If somebody says, I accept just neo-Darwinian biology with no change at all, and then I want to speak about divine action, it seems to be impossible. Right? There has to be some opening of a broader kind. You cannot accept Jacques Monod, right, his position on biology, and have a place for divine influence. I mean, of course you can say that, but then you're a complete separationist between the two. For me, the interesting positions in between, not traditional Darwinian, not the negation of evolution, but this rich variety of positions in between. If consciousness is nothing more than the neurons, like Crick says, you're nothing but a pack of neurons, then there is almost nothing you can do about the phenomena of consciousness. You can say, it appears, people have experiences, they have feelings, but there's nothing there that has a metaphysical richness and really a religious usefulness. On the other hand, you can have a strongly dualistic position that says the mind has nothing to do with the brain, and this is problematic. And again, in between, we can recognize 6 or 7 or 8 different positions, and all of which are satisfying to the science and open to religion.
Well, but now I move to another question about the progress of the field of science and religion in the academic and the problem we are facing, especially how do you see the situation between the intelligent design on one hand and creationists and Richard Dawkins and other people on the other hand, and what sort of solution we can find to show this middle ground position to a large audience? What are the progress in academic field? What are the problems we are facing? And because I suppose we'll speak about this problem, how we can push the middle ground I described.
I am in some ways most encouraged by Islam in the United States. The young Muslim scholars, great scientific training. These are second or third generation, or maybe many generations in the United States. Great scientific training and commitment to belief in God.
Thank you. So now I want you to describe the 5 or 6 options you said between classical Darwinism and people who reject evolution. When I say classical Darwinism is the same box Dawkins and Gould, despite they are very different. So I don't mean punctuated equilibrium as a new theory, of course, but what is behind, in the middle, between people who reject evolution and classical Darwinists.
Yeah. I'll move from the classical Darwinism up a series of ascending steps to something that then begins to push at the very limits of biological evolution. Okay, the first stage are those views that allow the emerging organisms to alter their environment. Right? We have this in Lynn Margulis, for example, a little bit in Terry Deacon, Ursula Goodenough. These are thinkers who believe that the nature of the organism transforms the environment it was a part of. It is not a genetic determinism moving from the bottom up, but it is an interactive form of evolution making itself, right? And there's a first openness for religious language, developed, for example, by Phil Hefner in his sort of naturalistic, vaguely theistic understanding. The next level says, I call it a Platonic approach to evolution. And it says that it's not just that, but there's a certain natural tendency toward a specific outcome. So it might be, as in Simon Conway Morris, a natural tendency to convergence on discovery of the I, motility, thought, self-awareness, religion, right? In another case, it would be a natural tendency for certain proteins to be formed, certain body types. And again, that you have something more than just random variation and selective retention. The position of Roger Sperry, Nobel Prize in medicine for his work in neurology. His position involves a kind of final causality because the brain as a whole, thought, does something which is more than the parts and which has intentions and goals. That God designed the process of evolution in order to achieve a being who could be aware of him and worship him. And that the natural patterns and so forth were a way that God could bring about this final conclusion.
So, last question about the dialogue between civilization and how to avoid the clash of civilization is through the ethics, for the common concern of environment, for what are the best way for you to try to avoid the clash of civilization?
Yeah, on this one I am completely enthusiastic about the field of science and religion. I suggest that there is no other area in human culture today, in humanity today, that can so bring together the planet than the working together of our scientific information and problems that we know through science. See, we know deforestation through science, the problem of biodiversity through science, problem of global warming through science. Each one of these is a scientifically defined problem, right? It's inescapably scientific. And the religious response, and such a wide variety of religious responses, the traditional religions, and their concern in Islam for God appointing us as vice regents, in Christianity to be called to take care of and cultivate the world, in Judaism the care to bring about justice, the divine justice in the world. These have their ways of speaking of the human calling in this world with its scientific problems. But there are many newer forms of religion or spirituality which I think are moving larger and larger number of people. I see this in the United States, for example, in the environmental movement. Every 2 weeks, there's another book that says the environmental movement is fundamentally a spiritual movement. And without that sense of our spiritual connection to the planet, there will be no answer. I would predict that in the next even 10 years, we will see it become a matter of course that the deepest scientific problems require a deeply spiritual response.
And now it's not a question, but 14 years ago you was at UIP for the first time, you came many times. After this we have developed huge international program for collaboration on the Science and Spiritual Quest number 2. So I want you to say something about UIP, about your appreciation of our work, and perhaps even something on me if you want.
Yeah, well that's a good question, because the honest answer is that my own development as a scholar in this field owes a lot to a conversation in near Munich in February, I think I want to say, of 1994, when a strange Frenchman who was just learning English for the first time came up to me and picked up my collar and said, "You are coming to Paris! You are coming to Paris!" And I didn't really understand science religion at that time as an international movement. It was for me an area of personal scholarship and of personal faith. But a few months later, I flew on an Air France jet to Paris, and we stood in the Sénat, and it was full, and there were 3 other speakers, Bernard d'Espagne, Michael Denton, forgotten the other, Tuan, yes, were together. And suddenly I saw a public. So this man, Jean Stone, could bring together a public who were intellectual, they were thinking, and they believed that these questions were of great importance. That happened in 1994. In 1997, I think it was the major room of UNESCO, 1,300 people filling this room, coverage from the major French press. And suddenly I realized, this is not a private area of scholarship. This is a movement that could transform the world. And I think when you and I sat down to plan for SSQ2, and we did before the final grant was given, we took a walk on a California beach, and we said, this is how we will do it. And I think the vision that you showed me in 1994 and 1997, there was a public, and these questions were transformative for many people today. You and I built that vision into SSQ2, and we made it happen. It was a tremendous success. I think it clearly transformed my life and my self-understanding. It transformed UIP to be a world player in the debate, to be the one of the most significant partners of the Templeton Foundation internationally, if not the most significant partner. And I want to say, but it doesn't sound very humble, it transformed the world in some way.